The House comes to questions. I'll answer question number 1 in the name of Jonathan Young.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance and asks, what recent reports has he received on employment in New Zealand?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, last week Statistics New Zealand released the labour market data for the December quarter of 2015. It showed that New Zealand's unemployment rate had fallen to 5.3%, with 175,000 additional jobs created over the last 3 years. That means New Zealand has the 10th lowest unemployment rate in the OECD, but that doesn't tell the full story. Our employment rate is the 3rd highest in the OECD. New Zealand's labour market participation rate is also the 3rd highest in the OECD, and it was also pleasing to see the proportion of 15 to 19-year-olds not in education, employment or training is at the lowest level since records began.
Supplementary. Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Jonathan Young.
How do changes in the average wage compare to cost of living increases?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
On behalf of the Minister of Finance, Statistics New Zealand figures show that the average weekly wage is up 3.1% over the last year to over $56,000, with real wages growing considerably faster than inflation, which is at just 0.1%. Treasury expect the average wage to reach $62,500 by 2020, with another 173,000 jobs forecast by then. These results highlight the importance of continuing the government's program of microeconomic reform that helps businesses have the confidence to invest and employ more people. This is particularly true given the signs of further international economic turbulence we've seen recently.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Jonathan Young.
What recent steps has the government taken to support more jobs and higher wages through international trade?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister, last week New Zealand hosted the signing of the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. This agreement means better access to 800 million consumers in 11 other countries that account for around 36% of the global economy. This will be New Zealand's first FTA with 5 of those countries: Japan, Canada, Mexico, Peru and the US, which is of course the world's largest economy. The agreement means New Zealand firms have increased opportunities to diversify that will translate into more jobs and higher wages for New Zealand families.
Order. Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
Is it correct that the Household Labour Force survey shows that the labour force participation rate is lower by nearly 1% over the last year? That's 61,000 more people who have opted out of the labour market, 6 times larger than the fall in unemployment during the same period.
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Well, Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, I appreciate the member's newfound interest in the participation rate, because normally he rubbishes the participation rate. But for the member's benefit, yes, the participation rate has dropped. I talked to Statistics New Zealand about that, so listen, you might learn something. 50% of that is people retiring. 50% of it is people retiring. Now, the member may like to take the view that people shouldn't be allowed to retire, and of course that is possibly Labor Party policy, but on this side of the House we think once they've got to a certain age and they want to retire, they should be allowed to do so with their super.
Supplementary.
Order. Supplementary question, Jonathan Young.
What alternative prescriptions for New Zealand's growth has he seen?
Order. Insofar as his ministerial responsibility, I'll be listening for that. The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Well, Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, I have seen 1 or 2 commentators lamenting New Zealand's reliance on dairy and the need to diversify. And New Zealand says one commentator in particular is too reliant on dairy and needs to move up the export value chain. Unfortunately, this very same commentator has been a leading participant in opposing one of the single most important measures this government has taken to achieve increased diversification and move up the value chain.
Order. Member, Minister, resume. I can sense exactly where the question's going to go, and it's not going to help the order of this House. Question number 2, Andrew Little.
Thank you, Mr.